I want to do a segment where I predict first-round draft picks. Rules are these. I'm going to give you 32 names, okay? Doesn't matter where those players get drafted. So who I say goes at 1, or who I list number 1 here, might go at number 32. I don't know. But if they get drafted in the first round, that's a check mark for your boy, okay? We'll revisit this after the NFL draft is done. We'll learn more, I'm sure, about what these guys are and who they are and what the teams think about them more importantly. But I also think that we need to start with this when we talk about the first round in the NFL draft. If you are being drafted in the first round, you are either expected to be a long-term replacement for somebody else that's a little long in the tooth or just ain't got the kind of tools that you want, or you are expected to make the 2 deep on either one of those rosters. Like, one of the things that I have to remind people is there are only 53 men on an NFL roster. Now, do that math. That's 44 players on 2 deeps, okay? That means you got 9 dudes, some of whom are specialists left. So if you're a first-round draft pick, you're supposed to be on that 2 deep and then challenge for starting time, right? And that's where the quarterback thing gets a little weird because quarterbacks are weird. But I want to set the ceiling kind of low and set the floor kind of low as well when we're talking about first-round picks, because we expect these guys to come out and be amazing, and sometimes they just aren't. You know, sometimes it's as if they haven't played professional football before, and we're shocked by this. I think sometimes we just go a little too hard because the nature of the NFL draft is us building the kids up to a level that is they ought to be AP All-Pros, and that's just not going to be what it is. Like, one of the conversations I really hated about this season in particular was the number of people that tried to tell me with a straight face that Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, the like, were not any good because they play on booty teams and it was their first year in the NFL. It might still be true, but you got to give them time. And at least in the case of Justin Fields, he didn't even get to start every game, and he wasn't the guy from the jump. Everywhere that Justin Fields has been, he's won football games. You just got to give him the reins and let him do what he does. Ryan Day would be the first person to tell you that. So I'm going to look at the Chicago Bears and say, you're changing up your head coach, you're changing up your general manager, go fix that. Keep that in mind as we're talking about first-round picks and who your team decides to draft in the first round. Okay. Number 1 on the list, going 1 to 32 because, order doesn't really matter here. Aidan Hutchinson, the Michigan man in Detroit. I feel like it's a slam dunk for Detroit because the man is from the area. He grew up a Michigan fan. His father played at Michigan. He had an outstanding career at Michigan that ended on a relatively awesome high note and has since vaulted him in the conversation for being the number 1 overall pick. We didn't expect that to be the case to start the season. So I like that, and I think he's going to be a first-round draft pick because Detroit actually does need the help on the defensive line. 2 on the list, Kayvon Thibodeaux. I'm comparing Kayvon Thibodeaux to Nick Bosa Part 2, okay? I think that's how good he can be. He's that fast off the edge. He's that physical off the edge. And you're going to have to double team him unless he's out there in a wide 9 where there's not much you can do about it. If you put a tight end on him, he's going to eat him up, right? Let's not overthink this. Kayvon is that dude. You want that dude on your team. Number 3, Nakobe Dean. Linebacker, Georgia, their captain, their best player. So first, you're the best player on a national championship team, and you're a linebacker. That's pretty good. I think the comp here is Roquan Smith, and that's not just because of the Georgia colors, but because he moves like a safety too. And my favorite thing that I've heard said about Nakobe Dean is that man is going to make you right. No matter what you ask him to do. You might coach him poorly. He's going to make you right. Because hash mark to hash mark, sideline to sideline, he can fly. He's a great blitzer. He's great in coverage, and he commands attention, right? This is a guy that you want leading your defense. I really love him as a football player, and I think he's going to be outstanding in the league. Just give him some time. Okay, number 4 on the list, Evan Neal, Alabama. That man is 6'7", 350 pounds, and he hit the splits from a standing leap on some blue mats about 6 feet in the air. Jumped up, split his legs, landed on the mats, and did not, throw a hip. Throw his groin. Like my groin would have been way over there somewhere had I tried to do that. This dude not only was there, but he was there like Jean-Claude Van Damme in Bloodsport. Just holding it. Just zen with it, looking like he was getting ready to summon Jutsu. Some of y'all don't know that I watched the Naruto too. Evan Neal's going to be that guy, right? You want him at offensive tackle. Okay, number 5 on this list. Derek Stingley Jr. Yeah, Derek Stingley Jr. I'm going to say Pat Peterson Part 2. Now, Stingley didn't have the kind of season that I expected him to have in his draft-eligible year, but the tools are still there. Comes back from this injury, he'll be okay. He can fly. He can play both ways if that's what you want him to do. He can return punts for you, return kicks for you, and he's a great cover corner. Like, you want him as your shutdown guy. You want to take away the other team's best wide receiver, he's the guy to help you do that. Number 6 on this list, Tyler Linderbaum coming out of Iowa. Now, Linderbaum came into the season as the number 1 interior lineman available in the 22 draft, and he has exited the season with the same manner. I think it's Creed Humphrey meets Quentin Nelson, meaning if you want to move him to guard, cool, he'll destroy people, but you probably want him at center because he's that smart and that's his natural position. I think he's going to be able to help somebody get right in a hurry with their offensive line. It's just a matter of who will use a first-round pick, let alone a top 10 pick, on a center. It just doesn't happen. But I think it could with him. Okay, number 7 here, Jameson Williams. I'm comparing Jameson Williams to Joey Galloway because Joey Galloway came out of Ohio State and ran a 4.18 40-yard dash. I'm going to say that again. He came out and ran a 4.18 40-yard dash, and Jameson Williams is that fast, and in returning kicks, you won't catch him. And if you get your hands on him, he's going to spin out of it. He's going to take it back to the house. He finished the season, 79 catches, nearly 1,600 yards, taking the top off the defense. Like, the other comp here for me is Randy Moss, who was just as fast. And that's what you used him to do. You used him to stretch the safeties, right? If they can't run with him, that's 6. And Jameson Williams could do that on every play when he was healthy. Now it's about whether or not you're going to be able to trust his rehab, because blowing out an ACL does not guarantee that you're going to come back with your speed, though that is what we are all betting on, because I would love to see a guy with blazing speed and those sorts of hands and his wiggle in the NFL. I think he could be amazing, outstanding. All right, number 8 on the list, Charles Cross, coming out of Mississippi State. I think this is this year's Rashawn Slater. Like, last year, during the college football playoff national championship, I jump on at halftime. I talk with Joel Klatt about his top 10 NFL draft selections. Rashawn Slater's on the list. He had sat out the season for COVID coming out of Northwestern. And he thought that I was going to lay into him for having Rashawn Slater on the list. And I'm like, no, I thought he projected at guard, but he anchored really well. He was a mauler, and he was big and fast. Like, outside of Tristan Wirfs, one of the most ready-made physical athletes that I have seen coming out of the Big Ten Conference in a long time. And that includes Ohio State offensive lineman. And he turned into a second-team All-Pro. Like, number 1, shout out to Joel who saw it. And then, number 2, Charles Cross has the same sort of dimensions, right? And I think you could ask him to do those same things. We'll see what the Houston Texans want to do. They got a head coaching vacancy. They got to short out. But you need a Charles Cross on your team. Everybody does. And if that guy ends up being Rashawn Slater Part 2, everybody wins. Number 9, Sam Howell, who I'm calling Baker Mayfield light. You know, he's got this boxy frame. He's not necessarily that lean, but he's got a cannon for an arm. His feet move in concert with his arm. He sees the field very well. He throws the ball in rhythm. Of the quarterbacks available, I think he's the most ready-made for the NFL presently. And since we're not so hung up on height anymore, Number one, because Kyler Murray's still Kyler Murray, and number two, because Desmond Ritter's 6'4" and throwing balls that people bat down. If you need a quarterback, he's the first one I got to take off the board. Now, the Baker Mayfield label is getting a little, shall we say, brown, because it just didn't go well in 2021, right? And Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson have turned out to be the jewels in that class, while Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen, yikes. But I'm betting that Sam Howell has a really great NFL career. Okay, number 10 on this list, Kyle Hamilton, coming out of Notre Dame. Kyle Hamilton is a doggone pterodactyl who is your single high safety. He can cover the entire field by himself. If you watch the Buffalo Bills play the New England Patriots in the wild card weekend, you saw Micah Hyde. You saw how he was able to cover the entire field and make plays on the ball that he had no business making plays on, let alone snatching off of Nelson Aguilar's shoulder. That is who Kyle Hamilton is. He is a pterodactyl playing center field, which means that you can run man coverage and you can blitz whenever you want, because that guy allows you that ability with the other safety in the box, right? I'm excited to see what Kyle Hamilton becomes, because the other guy that I would compare him to, at least coming out, was Isaiah Simmons, in that if Isaiah Simmons was made to play free safety as opposed to play inside linebacker, I think we're talking about the same kind of player, right? Hamilton has been allowed to play DB and safety for his entire career. Coming out of the Atlanta area to Notre Dame, has done nothing but live up to his moniker as one of the most physical football players on that team, right? To say nothing of gifted. Let that man return kicks. Let that man play both ways if that's what you need to do. But for the love of all things holy, let him play free safety so that we can see that magnificent athleticism. Okay, number 11 on this list, Garrett Wilson, coming out of Ohio State. I'm comparing him to Justin Jefferson. It's not that he's as slept on as Justin Jefferson was, because Justin Jefferson going off in the playoffs was a very big deal, right? It's that he's got that sort of talent. Now, Justin Jefferson's forever linked with Jalen Reagor, or I should say Jalen Reagor's forever linked with Justin Jefferson. So I'll be curious to see where Garrett Wilson falls in that line coming this April. But he was the most talented wide receiver on the team to start the season, and then Jackson Smith and Jigba said, no, I'm him. And then, to their credit, Garrett Wilson, and we'll talk about it in a little bit, Chris Olave, both pointed at Jackson Smith and Jigba and said, yeah, it's him. But Garrett Wilson started as a 5-star, ended as a 5-star. I think that's a first-round draft pick, and I think we all win there on the evaluation. Number 12 on this list, Matt Corral, who I am nicknaming the Rally Flag. So I was not high on Matt Corral to start the season. I'm not terribly high on Matt Corral at the end of the season. I still remember throwing 5 interceptions against a bad LSU team and throwing 6 interceptions against an Arkansas team. However, of his 14 interceptions, those were 11 of them, right? It's those 2 games. If you put aside those 2 bad games in the NFL, they're going to evaluate your 3 best and your 3 worst. Those are 2 of his worst. You still got a really great quarterback, and you got a guy that is going to bring some moxie and some courage and some want to your organization. Hence the rally flag. Everybody's going to be able to rally around him. He's going to be your standard bearer. He's going to be the face of your franchise, the CEO of your franchise. And you want him, especially after how he has comported himself in 2021, even wanting to play in that bowl game, risking getting hurt, not regretting a thing. That's who you want to be your quarterback in the NFL. Number 13 on this list, George Karlaftis, the Greek freak in the NFL. Greek freak because, my man is Greek. It's about the end of it. But coming out, 5-star defensive end type, turned into that at the Boilermakers, who are mostly known here of late for their offensive prowess. George Karlaftis has the ability to be a dominant edge rusher, an outstanding 5 technique. I'm excited to see what he looks like. Plus, coming out of Purdue is not easy. I mean, it's an engineering school, put it this way. My sister is married to a PhD in computer science. His PhD is from Purdue, and he's got one of these big government jobs that he ain't allowed to talk about. That's the kind of dudes that they turning out intellectually at Purdue. That's the kind of dude that you're going to be drafting at George Karlaftis. He is that smart. He is that cool. and I'm excited to see how he looks in the NFL. Okay, number 14 on this list. Alabama wide receiver John Metchi. Okay, so I missed over the weekend because I was too, I think, sidetracked by Slade Bolden announcing that he was going to be in the NFL draft. I'm like, child, why? Take that extra year. You are not these other two. You're not John Metchi or Jameson Williams. But John Metchi has great ability, and I'm comparing him to Tulsa's own Tyler Lockett. He can catch a bunch of passes for you. He can return kicks. That's what you want to do. He's going to be both a down-the-field threat and the middle threat. If you want to line him up in the slot, you can do that. You want to put him on the numbers, you can do that as well. I would add here, while Jameson Williams was the most talented wide receiver this year, the guy with the most catches, John Metchi. So if you're looking for a Cooper Kupp type, that's your guy. Okay, next on this list, number 15, Malik Willis. I'm comparing Malik Willis to Kyler Murray light because of what he's able to do with his feet and because he also has a cannon for an arm. He can throw off balance and still flip that thing 70 yards. He fell into an offense that he knew how to run and was trusted to run at Liberty. The problem I have is that Malik Willis lost the starting job to Jarrett Stidham at Auburn. Say that again, Jarrett Stidham. You saw Jarrett Stidham in 2020. You don't want Jarrett Stidham to be your starting quarterback. I'm saying Malik Willis is more talented, but there was a reason why he lost that job, even as Gus Malzahn was still, running an offense that mostly wanted to throw goes and post. We'll see how the NFL projects him, but he's going to get the same kind of conversation I think that Trey Lance got. Jury's still out on Trey Lance, but I think if you need a quarterback, take a swing. You might end up with Pat Mahomes. Who knows? Okay, number 16 on the list, Kenny Pickett. It's got Dan Marino shine. I've talked about Kenny a bunch. I can talk about Kenny a bunch. We don't need to do it here. Thanks for watching this video. And remember, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any other videos on the #1 Ranked Show YouTube channel.